Joseph, and so you're only going to see the bottom of my mouth. What we're going to do today is we are going to do what we call a color retouch. So when we would necessarily do a color retouch is when a client has already colored their hair and it has started to regrowth. So now we have a line of demarcation where their natural hair is to where their colored hair is. So what we have to do is what we call a refresh. We just refreshing up her roots. So what we want to do is only concentrate on the new growth. We don't want to color the whole entire hair. So people ask us all the time, why do we charge what we charge? The reason why is because we're educated and we know what to do and what not to do. Most people, when they dye their hair at home, they color the hair from root to end every single time. And what happens over time is color buildup. When they want to take that color out, there's a lot of color buildup. It's hard to strip out. It fries the hair. Like, what we're not thinking about is there's peroxide and chemicals in there. So we're covering pieces of the hair that don't need color on them, especially if you're dyeing your hair like black. Black is black, so there's no need to keep on layering black on black on black on black on black, especially if all you really need is a root retouch. So what we do is we take our time and only do the roots. We can pull it through the last 10 minutes. I'll tell y'all more about that when we get to the end to make sure everything's nice and fresh. But this is why we keep the hair in integrity. We keep our name. We're trusted, things like that. It's because we do it the right way. Okay, so what I'm going to do is walk you through the steps of a color retouch. So step number 1, after we have chemically draped our client and put her in 4 sections for control and balance, is we're going to put on our gloves. You always want to wear gloves. I don't care how clean and professional you are. You don't want to walk around with like orangutan hands, or it's going to dye your fingernails, things like that. So just always make sure you wear gloves. Cool. Next thing is we want to put protective cream over the client's head, especially with doing a color retouch. So what I'm going to use is my petroleum jelly. This acts as a good barrier. You can really use anything. You can use conditioner. You can use lotion. Just anything that's going to act as a barrier against the skin, especially if you're going to be doing like a dark color like black or red, because it's really going to stain the skin. So this way, if you do get any color really close to the roots, especially if you're doing like gray coverage, this will protect our skin. It'll make it much easier when we're done and we shampoo our client out. It's not going to stain the skin. It's only going to like absorb into that petroleum jelly, so it'll just wipe right off. You'll have a nice clean line. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we have our client in 4 sections. So as y'all may or may not learn, is if you're going to start in the back, you need to finish in the back. And if you're going to start in the front, you need to start in the front. What that means is if I'm going to do one of these front sections, my next section should be the next front one. I shouldn't go back. The reason why is there's different heat in the head, especially in the back. It heats up a little better than it does in the front because there's all this heat back here. So this is going to process faster than it will in the front. So you want it to process more evenly. So if I'm going to start in the back, I want to do my back 2 first and then move on to my front. So I have a nice even radial lift with my color instead of it being like dark, light, dark. This way it's all uniformed all together. I personally always start in the back. That's just my preference, but you can do whatever you like. All right, so I'm gonna start in this back right quadrant right here. So what we're gonna demo right now is a color retouch. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have my color already mixed up. Now, normally with regrowth, our client hopefully is coming back to see us every 6 weeks. So they should only have really only like about a ½ inch of new growth, but everybody's going to be different. It's literally that line of demarcation. So if your client has waited like a year to see you, obviously they're going to have like 6 inches of regrowth. This is only a ½ inch. So what I do first is I get my color on my brush and I'm going to trace the perimeter about a ½ inch. This way, this is like our insurance plan. A lot of stylists don't do this. The reason why I do it is when we start doing color retouches, we're gonna take 1/4 subsections going across. And sometimes if you're doing something dramatic, like your client's blonde or anything like that, and I only work horizontally, every now and then you'll get these little black dots right here on the side where your sections were, because you're not evenly saturating everything. So by tracing your perimeter first, only going up to that new growth, this is like your insurance plan, just to make sure everything's going to be nice and uniform and colored all the way around. Okay, so after I trace my perimeter, just make sure I get it really good, is I'm going to drop my section. Okay, so we need to take 1/4 subsections. So typically what 1/4 looks like, if you need a little help, is I always get my comb. And if you look at the teeth on your comb, it's usually this big tooth right here, this big one, and 3 of the little ones, okay? So about here is 1/4 of an inch from where my finger is to the end of the comb, okay? So I take a 1/4 subsection, I slice it all the way across. I wanna make sure that it's nice and sliced and clean, that it's a straight line here, all the way across, it's not crooked, anything like that. And then all I'm gonna do is get my color, and I'm gonna apply it to the new growth on both sides just to make sure everything's nice and saturated. And then I need to do an indent. So how I properly indent is I place my comb on the scalp, I fold that hair over the comb, and what I do is I'm gonna pull the hair towards away from me and pull the comb towards me. And it's gonna give it a nice little indent, okay? Then I just repeat that pattern. I take another 1/4 subsection, get my color, put it on the roots, both sides, and then indent. And then I'm gonna do it again. Take a 1/4 subsection, make sure it's nice and clean, apply my color on both sides, indent, and scoot over. Now, the reason why we indent is we need to make sure that State Board can see our subsections. So by indenting, they can see that you took 1/4 subsection, only put the color on the roots, things like that. So when you're done and you raise your hand and you say, hey, prospector, come check my work, they can already see that it's 1/4 subsections and you only did the roots because you indented so well. So indentation is very important, especially when we're taking our boards. You don't want everything all mushed together and just slapping it on the roots. And again, this is like our insurance plan. Each subsection that we're taking, we're making sure to cover both sides. It's thick enough that there's complete saturation, and I'm making sure that everything's nice and complete and clean. So there's not messy color, they're not getting it all over their face, their ear, their nose, all over the place. If anybody's ever colored their hair at home, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The bathroom looks crystal clean, and then you come back an hour later to rinse your hair out, and all of a sudden your whole entire bathroom is black. That's because color oxidizes and starts turning colors. So you want to be as clean as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue this section, and then when I get to the bottom of it, I'm going to show you how to re-indent the other way. So just follow along. So now that I'm here at the bottom, Roughly, this took me about 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes. Timing again is everything. Your client doesn't have all day to sit here to do color, especially with color. It starts to oxidize, so you need to work kind of fast. If you take your sweet time, like if it's taking you like 2 hours to apply the color, it's going to be done. The color is already done oxidizing and processing before you even hit the front. So you want to work at a good pace. You don't want to be Superman and then start skipping pieces just because you're trying to rush. But ultimately, each section should take you no more than 5 minutes to apply color on, okay? So now that I'm right here at the bottom, what I need to do is, this is what also I call my insurance plan, is I got to make sure that everything's done correctly. This is my one chance to go back and make sure that everything is done correctly. You never want to just pull all the hair down and then move on to your next section. What's happening when you do that is all your subsections smash together. You want to keep those indents because the oxygen flows through them. It helps oxidize the color, helps it process faster instead of it all being smushed together. So what I do is I retake my 1/4 subsections. I always double check both sides to make sure they're evenly saturated. I put my brush on the bottom. I pull my brush to the top and my hair towards the bottom. So it's the opposite sections that I was taking before. And this is just helping me indent. Make sure everything's nice and clean, everything's saturated, that I did a good job. I can re-clean up my subsection, so if something got a little sloppy, something got a little crooked, it's my one chance to go back and straighten it out. Like I said, checking for dry spots to make sure nothing isn't saturated, everything's good to go. And this is going to help you out in the long run. Because if you work from the bottom to the top, which a lot of people do, it's not bad. It's whatever your preference is. But if you're sloppy and you have a lot of dry spots, or you didn't do even saturation, it's going to process uneven. So you only get one shot to fix your mistake. So that's for more advanced people that have been doing this for a while, that can bust out color in about 15 minutes. They've been doing this for a hot minute. Not saying that y'all aren't good enough to do it that way. It's just I prefer to always check myself before I wreck myself. I always want to make sure that I did the best job possible. That way my client can't complain and tell me that I don't know what I'm doing or it wasn't very professional. All right, so you can see now that we did all of that, we can see all our subsections right here. They all look like 1/4. You can only see that the roots are saturated. So when the prospector comes by, that's what they're looking for. So because you indented the right way, they can see that the roots are evenly saturated. You only did the new growth and you did the whole perimeter. Cool. So what I'm going to do now is finish this mock, and then we'll show you the end result at the end. discovered with the front is I cut the corner. So what that means is I work from this corner, I go about 3 or 4 subsections at a diagonal, and then I will turn the rest straight. The reason why is that I learned if I always work from a diagonal, about this section, it's so wide that it's hard to flip and work with. And it's the same thing with going just horizontal. It gets too wide. So cutting off that corner shortens my width and length of each subsection. It makes them easier to work with. So that's what I'm gonna do, okay? So it's still the same rules, 1/4 subsection, doing the roots, indenting, 1/4, roots, indenting. But I'm just going at an angle. You see how I'm slicing that? And then here, I just go horizontal, just straight the whole way down. Okay, I'm gonna do that on both sides. All the talking time, this took me roughly about 12 minutes, but as you can see, she has a color retouch all the way through. We did not do the ends, only the roots, the retouch. We're gonna let this sit and let it process for about 45 minutes, our manufacturer's directions. If I want to, at the end, if the ends need to be refreshed, like if she was black or red and it's a little faded, what I do is I let it sit on the roots for about 30 minutes. And then what I can do is get a comb and start combing that color all the way through. Just start spreading it out. And then with my leftover color in my bowl, or I can mix up a little bit more, I just add it to the ends. And like I said, just continue to comb it through, make sure everything's nice and saturated, and let that sit for another about 10-15 minutes and then rinse it out. It doesn't need to stay on the ends the whole 45 minutes. We're gonna end up over processing the hair. It only needs to be refreshed. So it only needs to sit on the ends for maybe 10-15 minutes, and that's it, tops. We rinse her out, shampoo her, and then call it a day. Cool? Well, that is a color retouch. Alrighty. Well, somebody taught you how to do a color retouch. So things that we need to remember is you always want to take 1/4 subsections. You need to remember that color absorbs, so you can take a little thicker subsection, but you don't want them too thick. because if you paint it on one side and paint it on the other side and you make it way too thick, it's not going to color on the inside and you're going to get inconsistencies. But because color absorbs, we're allowed to take a little bigger subsection, which is 1/4. That way it's enough that the color can absorb to the other side and you'll get even saturation. You want to make sure, especially at state board, your subsections are nice and clean and indented like we showed you. Because when you're done, there's no talking at state board. You can't say, hey, my name is Joseph, I just did a color retouch, I did 1/4 subsections, and they're just like, cool, they know what they're talking about. Now at state board, there's no talking. So they need to be able to look at your mannequin and see that you took 1/4 subsections and you only did the roots. So that's where indenting really comes in to help you, because it will look like it's supposed to be. Most color retouches, you're just gonna leave on for about 30 minutes on the roots, and then the last 10 to 15 minutes, you're gonna pull it through or do a shampoo cap, which we'll teach you later in another video, and saturate that hair to get an all over uniform color. Other than that, those are the most important things that you need to know. Anything else you want to add?
The reason we teach you go top to bottom is so that you get in the habit of indenting, because you end up indenting, twice with the retouch, and then if you go back and pull it through, you end up indenting 3 and 4 times total. So really get in the habit of indenting, it helps a lot.
Yes. And eventually you'll get your speed down. You'll notice the first couple of times you're just like, oh, with all this indenting, it's taking me like an hour. But eventually you'll get that motion, that flow, and it will literally take you like 15 minutes to do a whole entire head. And that's working from top to bottom, because that's the way I do it. I go top, flip, and then flip it back down. That's the way I do it, and I can do a whole color in about 10 to 15 minutes. So the speed comes with time. It comes with practice, things like that. So you'll get the hang of it. Just remember to saturate very well, make sure to only do the roots, and have fun.